Every single president since Roswell has known about the ET presence. Be assured of that. And then she wants a hearing for appointees. A lot of people overlooked that. They didn't realize how important that little statement was. Appointees? What's the difference between appointees and witnesses? It was not an issue you want to get into for 78 years. It's the equivalent of the emperor's new clothes, where the emperor is brought out in front of the village people and told that he has a wonderful new set of clothes because they convinced him that they were real, but in fact there's no clothes and the emperor's naked. Disclosure is the only thing I can even come close to imagining that can change this road to oblivion.
Stephen, welcome to Shifting the Paradigm. How are you today?
I am fine, dear. It's a pleasure to be with you on this fine day.
Thank you for being here. And you've been in this topic, dedicating your life to it for decades. And it seems like you've seen it all, you've heard it all, and you can really distinguish the truth from the lies. So I have so many questions, but you know how this works. For those that are hearing about you for the first time, who's Stephen Bassett and why did you get so passionately involved in UFO disclosure?
Well, I've devoted the last 30 years of my life, not the whole thing, but 30 years is a long time. And I made a simple choice back in 1995 that everything else I was doing just meant nothing to me. And naturally wasn't going very well. If things don't mean much to you, why should they go well? But this issue had always been with me, and started to look at it, and I thought, I think this may be something I want to jump into. Not as a business, I assure you. But the thing that clinched it for me was John Mack's book, Abduction. It said to me, this thing is happening. It's going to happen. It's going to be huge. And this is what I think I'd like to do if I can find a way in. And fortunately, there was one. In the back of the book was an address and a phone number. And I called them up and somehow convinced them to let me volunteer, which is something I wish I had done when I was younger, because you can volunteer for almost anything. But if you're chasing a paycheck, well, it narrows it way, way down. Went out there and spent 4 months. It was a wonderful 4 months. It got me going. And it was up there that I realized the path I needed to take. And that was based on a simple idea that the presence of these non-technologically advanced non-humans, which as far as I'm concerned are from other stars, while others just can't abide that. So they feel more comfortable if they're from another dimension or the future. What can I say? That the problem wasn't science. It wasn't proving it. It appeared to me there'd been more than enough proof. Decades of research and books and sightings and reports. What's the problem? The problem is it was a national security classified matter. It was being withheld for, quote, national security, which is a political matter, which means it's a political solution. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go for the politics. And I knew Washington very well, lived in and out of that area for my whole life. So I said, okay, I'm going down there and I'm going to engage the politics. Well, how am I going to do that? Right? And then it occurred to me, no one had ever registered as a lobbyist for this issue because the issue was stigmatized and so forth. And it was just something people would not think to do. Plus, there was no money. I mean, nobody's going to pay you to be that lobbyist. So I said, hey, I'll be the first one. It took me a couple of months to get down there, and I was worried somebody might beat me to it. So I finally arrived on July the 4th, 1996, and very quickly set up and got a registration in and was the first person to register as a lobbyist. Could I do any lobbying? No. Nobody wanted to talk to a UAP lobbyist, I assure you. But it was a marker. It was a simple statement that if this issue is real and therefore is important, as one can imagine, there should be a lobbyist, shouldn't there? Every other issue has one. And so, fine, that's what I did. But I also knew that the Washington Post, God bless them, it would eventually find out about it because they check all the lobbying registrations. And sure enough, they found out about it, sent out a reporter, big interview, big photo in the Washington Post. And suddenly, I was a thing. And so I think the next person that registered as a lobbyist was about 18 years later. It took 18 years before somebody registered. It might have been more like 20. So yeah, I was early. But what I ended up doing is lobbying the media. And I understood that the way to Congress back in the early days, certainly in the late 90s, was not going up on the Hill and begging people to talk to you. It was hitting the media with constant press releases and everything else on this issue. It's giving interviews if you can get them. And the politics would follow. The people, they would notice this. They would see these articles. And so I have given approaching 2,000 interviews since then. So I've stuck with that approach. I've had about 600 articles written about the subject, which included me or Paradigm Research Group. So that's the one thing I could do. I've also created an archive on my site where I have linked anyone who goes there to 16,000 articles. There's some links that need to be repaired, but there's 16,000 articles going all the way back to 1947, which is only a fraction of the total amount of media coverage, believe it or not. In fact, the media has covered this thing. It's covered pretty much everything. What it hasn't done is investigated it. They haven't pushed the government on it, but they've actually covered it. And you start reading these articles, you realize, well, yeah. And in the last 7 years, they've really covered it. I've got 7,000 articles linked since 2017.
And you mentioned your website where you can find thousands of articles. What's the name of that website? Plug it in.
ParadigmResearchGroup.org.
And that link will be in the description box below as well for those that want to catch all those links.
I am not impressed with the presence of extraterrestrials. I'll be honest with you. I was pretty sure that was the case when I was a teenager. There was plenty you could read that clearly pointed to that. And so I just said, yeah, there's ETs here. Boy, I can't wait to hear more about that from my government. And of course, so all those years, my entire life, I'm not shocked at all. And as I learned more about them and what have you, again, it was great to learn information, but it wasn't like, no. You know what impresses me more than the presence of extraterrestrials, which I'm certainly glad that they're here, is that the United States government was able to embargo that truth for 78 years, still technically, in spite of the fact that the ETs could come and go, do whatever the hell they wanted, and that what they were doing was starting to be reported, not hundreds of times, not thousands of times, but hundreds of thousands of times. Untold number of sightings. Scores of thousands investigated, maybe 100,000 plus investigated, and then the contactee reports started emerging and becoming a thing in the late 1980s, and they've amassed up to probably 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 of these reports have been submitted privately to researchers, and yet the truth embargo continued, right? And then the media coverage, tens and tens of thousands of articles going all the way back to 1947, alluding to it, talking about it. As you move forward, the articles get more robust, less and less stigma, less and less debunking, and yet the truth embargo abided, okay? And then the documentaries come out and the books. And how did they do that? This is what impresses me, how they able to convince the American people, or at least, convince the American people, the academics, the scientists, the journalists, everyone, that this was not an issue, or it was not an issue you want to get into for 78 years. It's the equivalent of the Emperor's New Clothes, where the emperor is brought out in front of the village people and told that he has a wonderful new set of clothes because they convinced him that they were real, but in fact there's no clothes and the emperor's naked, which was immediately picked up by a young child, and it was over. They managed to convince us the emperor has new clothes for 78 years. That's unbelievable. How did they do that in a democratic society? If this was a dictatorship, the whole last 7, 8 decades, I go, yeah, it's crazy. There's no ETs here, and if you want to say otherwise, we'll be happy to take you out back and shoot you. So this is an amazing story, which one day will be told in a streaming 4-season streamer called Truth Embargo, or some massive movie, which I'd love to be involved in, believe me. That is impressive. And that's what I've been dealing with for this last 30 years. And what is amazing, of course, is that it's about to end finally. After 78 years, we're this close to finally having the truth embargo end, and the American people and the world's people being told, "Oh yeah, yeah, we got some technologically advanced non-humans here doing all kinds of things, and we sorry we didn't tell you sooner. But it was a national security thing, you know what I mean?" Oh, and your question, that was actually the lead up to the answer, believe it or not. Okay, so the truth embargo succeeded for many reasons. One of the most powerful things it did was stigmatize the issue, undermine it, and almost ghettoize literally the issue. In other words, if you want to go there, fine, but you're going to have to go in this intellectual ghetto where people are not allowed really, you shouldn't be touched, you shouldn't be talked to. So the demonizing of it was very effective. It had it had the effect of limiting the amount of media coverage and how far they would go. But one of its most important and powerful effects was money. You stigmatize the issue to the degree this was stigmatized, nobody wants to put money into it. Nobody wants to be attached to it. No foundations are going to say, "Oh yeah, this is something that could use our funds." No. Private individuals. No. And so this issue, this 78-year activist movement, in a sense, is probably the least funded movement of its type in history. It's extraordinary. Almost no money, comparable to the issue and so forth. And this has been effective. Now it's starting to change, finally. And that's not surprising. As the truth embargo collapses, the ability of people or willingness to put funds into the effort to get this truth out and other aspects of the issue is getting better. But it has been a really tough 70-some years.
And it seems that people's minds are much more open. More people are talking about this. There are so many movies, documentaries, podcasts, TV shows. The media is all covering it. We're living in very exciting times. And while we might feel so close, we got recent information that the UFO hearings that were meant to take place in May have been postponed and or canceled, according to a staffer on Burleson's team. Right after Grush got his clearance back. What's going on in your opinion on that? Like, why this sudden halt kind of out of nowhere?
It's not a halt, and the hearings haven't been canceled. The political process that's setting up the president to be able to come forward, all the appropriate stuff that was always needed, such as witnesses being able to privately talk to members of Congress, hearings finally being held, and of course substantial media coverage, legislation. 90%, 95 or more percent of all of those needed things have happened in the last 7 years. So that gives you a sense of how robust the disclosure process is. And naturally, when you're getting involved in that, there's going to be some setbacks, or you go forward, you come back, there's going to be some changes and things like that. But that's normal. That's true in any major political process. So we're no different. And so the situation with respect to what you're referring to is that Representative Luna, who is sort of like leading things out of the House Oversight Committee right now, though there are a number of people on the Oversight Committee, including Burleson, Mace, and Burchett, and now Comer, frankly, who are pushing this. She wanted to have a skiff and a hearing in that order. And she announced that last month. The skiff was going to be a pretty significant one. They had trouble getting skiffs, which is essentially the cone of silence, which is called the Sensitive Compartmental Information Facility, where classified people who have the right to say something to people who are also have the right to hear it. And she wanted that, and it was going to be robust. There's going to be several people in it, not only Grush, but I think Elizondo and maybe some others. And why did she want that? Not because even though she might not be able to relay that information, she could use the information that she was getting in the circumstance in the skiff to make decisions about how to structure a hearing, which way to go, some questions to ask, things like that. So it made total sense. And then the hearing was scheduled for the week of the 12th of May. It also corresponded with a May 1 briefing on the Hill, not a hearing, but a briefing on the Hill by a third-party entity called the UFO Disclosure Fund that was held literally in the Reagan, and that was sponsored by, I guess you could say, the committee. Otherwise, they couldn't be there. And so that was a big deal. And that took place and went down well. You had seven people gave some remarks. They were asked questions by the moderator, Lou Elizondo, with a very full-packed audience, and it was broadcast, live streamed to the world, and it's still available. Very significant, without question. But the SCIF had to be postponed because one or more of the people they needed in it were not available. Who knows why? It doesn't matter. And because the SCIF was postponed, she made the decision, not surprisingly, to postpone the hearing. And so the SCIF is now scheduled for the end of the month, and then the hearing will certainly will take place in June. And she's also mentioned publicly that she wants two hearings, one for government witnesses, which I say government witnesses, which I am hoping will include the SAC-based commanders who are first-hand witnesses to the shutdown of ICBMs who have wanted to testify for 30 years, and it's in play. I mean, every member of the committee has received several copies of their witness statements, including Representative Mace, who actually interviewed Bob Salas, the leader of these witnesses, who has been, again, trying to get in front of a committee and under oath for some time, met with him and indicated her favorable opinion of having them testify. And then she wants a hearing for appointees. A lot of people overlooked that. They didn't realize how important that little statement was. Appointees? What's the difference between appointees and witnesses? Well, witnesses are people usually that have been working in the military intelligence world who have very important information to relay that apparently they can relay for whatever reason that really takes us into, hopefully, the heart of the Truth Embargo and the government's engagement of the technologically advanced humans and the possession of craft, the possession of bodies, etc., etc. But an appointee, what she's referring to is Trump appointees. People have been appointed to the director of the CIA, or some people underneath that person, or the director of the Secretary of Defense, and there's some undersecretaries that are appointed, and over at the Homeland Security and the National Defense Office, there's a whole range of people that are basically appointees that are in departments that are relevant to national security. If she brings those in, and they take an oath and sit down in front of that committee, and I think that committee, the hearing she's talking about, may be in front of the entire, I think, allusion to the entire Oversight and Accountability Committee, which has got 50-some members, all right? They would be asked questions about this under oath. Now, think about that. What do you do if you're an Undersecretary of Defense appointed by the president? Now you're sitting down under oath and you're being asked about Grush or crash vehicles or any of the many things that have now become in the public domain. What do you do? I mean, do you say, I wasn't aware of it? Not good. Or I really can't discuss it? That's not good. Or give some ridiculous, roundabout statement that means nothing? Not good. So this could get very interesting. So let me assure you, the political, legislative, congressional process is still well underway. It's not going to turn around. There have been strong statements by a number of people within the House. They're not going to stop. Schumer has made it clear he's not going to stop. Two things that happened, which many of your viewers may not know about, is that 3 months ago, Representative Burleson, who is a moderate Republican, sits on the subcommittee and the House Oversight Committee, a really well and very well liked, very nice gentleman out of the 7th District of Missouri. He made a statement on News Nation in which he was calling on the president to disclose via executive order.
I've been reaching out to Trump's campaign and to his policy team, trying to get them to consider UFO disclosure.
What have they told you?
Do an executive order on that.
A lot of people probably never saw that. And then just a few days ago, Senator Schumer, maybe not a few days, a week or two, when President Trump put out might have been a tweet that, again, they're succeeding in getting the JFK records, and they're going to get the RFK records, the MLK records, as part of the mandate of the task force on declassifying federal secrets, what was set up by the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, who then put Luna, who was part of those two hearings, in charge of that task force, with the ability to give her subpoena power if necessary. That Schumer said, when seeing that statement, sent an email to the president asking him to also declassify the UAP files. And again, Schumer is the Democratic ranking member of the Senate, or minority leader of the Senate. All right. And Luna made a recent statement that this issue, the UAP issue, is the most bipartisan investigation in the history of the country. So you put all that together, you see where it's going. Everything, and I could go on, and I'm noted for that, but the point is, everything that's been happening in the last 4 months, particularly 4 or 5 months, but certainly the last year and a half, going back to the Grush hearing in front of the Oversight Committee, and the submissions of the UAP Disclosure Act two times, about to be 3 times. All of this, as far as I'm concerned, has established a platform, an adequate platform, for the President of the United States to step up on it in front of a mic and say, I've certainly checked in with many of the people involved in some of the things you've been seeing, and talked to some of my appointees and what have you. And I can confirm to you today that, in fact, yeah, there is an advanced non-human technology present, beings, and we do have crash vehicles. And a great effort is going to be made to start presenting all of the information related to that to the American people in an organized, responsible way through the UAP Disclosure Act, and ultimately you will know everything.
Are you implying that President Donald Trump will be the disclosure president?
Absolutely. It's all lined up. He's going to be the disclosure president. Because he's still got he's got 3.5 years left. Not that I think it's going to take that long. He's got 3.5 years left. And this issue is literally coming to a head right now. And so the idea that somehow all of this progress being made legislatively, and all the statements coming out from people of high rank and station that, yeah, there's ETs here, that somehow this will somehow survive, the Truth Embargo will continue to somehow exist like a zombie, like the Walking Dead, just kind of, just walking around Capitol Hill. No. So it's going to fall to President Trump to be the disclosure president. He could do it tomorrow. Now, there's a lot going on in the world. There's always a lot going on in the world. There's a lot on his plate. There's a tremendous amount of political unrest and division. I get it. But we have one president. And the disclosure, capital D, can only come from the president or another head of state, which I remind the Pentagon again, there are other heads of state out there, and one of them might just disclose this, in which case you're going to have a lot of egg on your face and a lot of tough questions to answer. But disclosure is disclosure, regardless of which head of state it comes from. But the situation is such that the president can do it now. Nobody is going to be shocked or surprised. And it's done. Now, for those that would be displeased by that because of their political position, I'm sorry. Okay? But I don't have much sympathy. Right? The disclosure is this disclosure be one of the probably the most single important event in human history, as far as I'm concerned. And it transcends politics and it transcends religion. And so if President Trump's disclosed, by God, he is the disclosure president, and he will receive an enormous historical legacy and political legacy. But those that are afraid, well, yeah, but then he'll rule the post-disclosure world. And no, that's not going to happen because other heads of state will jump in very, very fast. They're not going to sit around and wait to see how it goes. No, they're going to come forward with easy confirmation that their nation has known about this for some time. And one after another after another. And people say, well, won't that be awkward for them? No, it's simple. If the Prime Minister of the UK comes forward and says, yes, the United Kingdom has known about this presence, and we have substantial documentary evidence on that, documents and so forth, and then the UK citizen says, well, why didn't you tell us sooner? Why didn't you confirm it to us? And they will simply say, we deferred to the United States on this issue because it is the most powerful nation in the world. It was key to the defeat of the Axis powers, which saved the United Kingdom. Right? And it's also the biggest nuclear power, without question. And we're still in, and have been in the entire time, a Cold War and a nuclear arms race. And we deferred to this, to our ally, the United States, when this would be disclosed. We were not going to cut in line. The same thing will come from Canada and Australia, the French, the Germans, name it. All of them will say that. Now, Xi Jinping have a little different position when he has confirmed it, and he gets some press asking him, well, why didn't you tell us? And basically he'll say, because I didn't think it was in the best interest of China. And now the press conference is over. Same for Vladimir Putin. I wasn't in the best interest of Russia or the Soviet Union, and so we didn't. No more questions. So they're not going to have a problem, and neither are allies. And therefore, from that moment forward, after disclosure has taken place, it's going to be a global engagement of leaders of nations coming together to discuss how they are going to how they're going to conduct their affairs in the post-disclosure world. How are they going to inform their people, and so forth. And hopefully, and this is why I do what I do, it's why Danny Sheehan does what he does, it's why everybody I know have literally committed their life to this, basically, and this sounds ridiculously optimistic, but I don't think it is. These nations will also be talking about, in light of the reality that clearly, or in light of the fact that the whole world is now fully aware of the reality, we're not the only intelligent species in this galaxy. We're not the most advanced species or advanced civilization. And if they're from the stars, as I think will get confirmed soon enough, there is unlimited possibilities in terms of how we might engage the larger galaxy, not the whole galaxy, just what's nearby. Should we reassess our affairs? Should we reassess how we are dealing with each other? Is it in our interest to have 12,000 nuclear weapons ready to launch at any time and destroy everything we've built? Is it in our interest to have endless conflicts between ethnicities and religions and so forth? Can we not deal with that and so forth? It is the hope that that can happen because the worldview change that will emerge from this disclosure event, which might be magnified by open contact, which I think could happen in a relatively short time after we finally disclose to ourselves and the world this truth. That's this is a feeling I have. It's a hunch, but it's a strong hunch. That may even magnify this change of perspective. We might then be able to get us out of this absurd, dangerous, grotesque situation we're in. When Roswell took place, about 2.3 billion people in the world. Now there's 8.3 billion people. And in those 78 years, another 4 billion people have come and gone, meaning that 10 billion people have come into this world since Roswell. Every one of them needing food and clothing and housing and government and structures and resources and energy and everything else you need. Disclosure is the only thing I can even come close to imagining that can change this road to oblivion.
I really like the way that you phrase everything, putting in the explanations of the population, and this being the most important conversation that humanity is having. The way that you expressed it, that this will bring us together, the first thing that came to mind was obviously Ronald Reagan's speech that he gave to the UN. Do we need to have an outside threat to bring us together? And it seems that time and time again, that answer might be a solid yes.
So let me respond to what you just said. Reagan knew about every president, every single president since Roswell has known about the ET presence. Be assured of that. All right? Every single president. There is no way that the military intelligence complex, which has had more than several crash vehicles, maybe even one from 1933, as well as bodies, has been able to keep that from a president. It's simply not possible. There are people who are literally going to tip the president off. In other words, it doesn't have to be formal. It just has to be somebody that realizes the president needs to know, and they just happen to be in a meeting. They step off, in a hallway. They look, and there are civilians that might do it. It's just not possible that a president is kept from this. It doesn't mean the president's going to do anything. It doesn't mean the president's going to suddenly just say, "Oh, let's disclose." No. But every single president is known, including Reagan. And so when he addressed that, made those statements to the UN and elsewhere, this was reflecting that he did know this, and he felt that this was something that he could speak to. And the way he addressed it back then, which was a much different time, is that wouldn't we all come together if there was a threat? Which is technically true, except in this case, there's a problem, which he wasn't going to elaborate on it. If, in fact, there is a threat from the extraterrestrials, we can come together all we want. We haven't got a snowball's chance. We lose. Whatever they want to do to us, they can do to us. They can wipe us off the face of the earth. Now, you need to know a little astrophysics and physics and so forth to maybe understand that. But, we might be able to burrow underground and a few of us survive. But if they wanted us gone, we'd be gone. And so that can't be true, right? It simply can't be true because that ain't going to work. We'll come together for a short while and then they're going to deal with this and that's going to be the end of us. Now, it turns out that they're not a threat in any way that is, I think, truly significant. There's a few things that one could point to and go a little concerned, but fundamental threat, no, they're not. But fortunately for us, it turns out and will turn out that their existence, the fact that they have been engaging us, not only since in the 20th century, but possibly going back, or at least other entities, maybe not here now, have engaged us in the deep past. The fact that that is true, that we are part of a galaxy that has plenty of life and plenty of civilizations, is so extraordinary. It is such a profound view change. It is a paradigm shift unprecedented. That can also bring us together, right? In other words, the idea that is embedded in our civilization and almost in our DNA, that this is a zero-sum universe. Anything you get, somebody has to lose. Any advance you make, somebody has to go down. There's always going to be winners and losers. The fact that violence is fundamental to intelligent life is bogus. But we're still trapped in that mindset. We're still trapped in that world. And so everything is in terms of violence and power. And therefore, that must be true for extraterrestrials. Apparently not. But for whatever reason, those 13 presidents could not succeed or were not willing to attack this embargo and end it. This president is different from those 13. He is the time is different, the platform is being built, and he is perhaps the most independent president ever. And by independent, I mean he is independent of many norms. He's independent of strong advisors that could, how would you say, sway him this way or sway him that way. He's unique. And for that reason, the barrier between him and doing what those other 13 presidents wouldn't do is very, very low. And so for that and many other reasons, he will be the disclosure president.
So then on the paradigm clock that your organization tracks, which is measuring the proximity to disclosure, where are we on that clock if 12 o'clock is disclosure?
The paradigm clock I created way back in 97, 8. Midnight is disclosure. It was kind of a cool clock, and I promoted it, and I tracked it and did a lot with it, but sometimes just fizzled out. But it still exists in a sense. And I created it to match up with the Doomsday Clock, which was created in 47 and still very much covered and dealt with by physicists who assess how close we are to nuclear war. They're sort of feeling a little guilty about the fact that, they helped build the damn thing. So the Doomsday Clock is now closest it's ever been to nuclear war. I think it's 89 seconds. Frankly, it could be 20 seconds as far as I'm concerned. And so the paradigm clock was intended to marry that in a sense. But I had to retroactively start it in 47 and then kind of run it forward. But I still use it as a powerful metaphor. For my lifetime, which goes right back to the beginning of this issue, the era, UAP era, and everybody else of this time, we have been living while there's a race going on between two clocks to midnight. And the question is, which one gets there first? Nuclear war is midnight on the Doomsday Clock, disclosure midnight on the paradigm clock. The Doomsday Clock is 89 seconds out. I put the paradigm clock much closer. I put it at like 10 seconds to midnight. Why? Because the Doomsday Clock is close to a midnight, which is catastrophic. Okay? So there's still some resistance in there from states and from leaders that we're really bad if we did this. Whereas the paradigm clock is approaching a midnight, which is not destructive. It's incredibly positive. It's a transformation. So it's a good thing. And so the resistance is falling apart. It's coming down. And so I'm going to put it at 10 seconds to midnight. There you go.
What if they were almost one and the same? That right when there was meant to be a nuclear war, that's when we get disclosure. Where everything just stops midair. And then
Oh, no, that's not disclosure. You're talking about intervention.
Is that not a type of disclosure? Contact, right?
Yeah, it's like being told. It's like being told on your deathbed that actually your parents were not your parents, you were adopted. I mean, it's like, oh, thank you. No. Look, I don't blame anybody, given the circumstances and the race between these two clocks, from hoping that if we get stupid enough to actually launch some of these nukes, that the ETs would come down and say, you idiots, and just turn them off. And that is supported by the fact that we have absolute confirmatory evidence that the ETs have turned off our ICBMs in situ in their silos on a number of occasions. And we have the witnesses to that, and they're ready to testify before Congress. And by the way, 3 of those witnesses will be at the Contact in the Desert Conference coming up May 29, June 2. Captain Jameson, Captain Schindel, and Captain Salas are going to be there in a panel. And Captain Salas is going to present about this. And that's going to be one hell of a panel. It's going to include it's an extraordinary panel. So that's going to be featured at the Contact in the Desert. So because they have shut down our missiles on a number of occasions, and Soviet missiles, there is a reasonable expectation by some people that, okay, if we launch them, they'll shut them down in the air. Or somehow they'll know in advance we're going to launch them and whatever. There's an awful lot of missiles and an awful lot of silos. They're in the ground. They're in the oceans. They might even be possible, but it is potentially possible. And some people are thinking that, and I discourage that thinking for a very simple reason. Okay, to the extent that you or any leader or anybody thinks they might intervene in the launch of nukes, simply reduces the motivation you have to start negotiating the elimination of these things. Don't worry, they'll take care of it. Big gamble. Are you willing to gamble your entire civilization on a hunch that they would shut them down? No. So I assume they will not. So disclosure. Yeah, so disclosure is not intervention with nukes. It's too late. Well, it would be kind of.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. But I remember, I believe it was in 2022 when we got our first hearing in 55 plus years with the AOI MSG. And Rep Gallagher brought up the Malmstrom Air Force Base, kind of touching on what Robert Salas had encountered. And I remember Scott Bray and Ronald Moultrie were like, I don't know what you're talking about. What is that? Maelstrom? And it was so shocking just because that was such a very specific case with
Mhm.
a specific question being practically targeted to Bray and Moultrie. And the way that they deflected it was disappointing, but that hearing in particular really set the foundation for the other hearings that have happened and that will come in the future of we're not going to take that nonsense anymore. We're not going to take those silly lame answers anymore. And with Rep Anna Paulina Luna, she's definitely demonstrated that. She's been very concise and clear during her hearings of I just want a yes or no answer. Give me the information. Don't go in a roundabout way. So it's interesting how this has been talked about over the last few years.
Here's the way I look at it. Now, a race gets underway, right? And it's like a 400-meter, whatever. It's like 4 laps, and your favorite runner is kind of not really doing very well, right? But it's just the start of the race, okay? And so the end of the Truth Embargo really gets underway in 2017, and it moves forward. And there's a certain amount of progress in various ways. The history of this, of course, needs to be chronicled. There needs to be a major movie, whatever. And then eventually we get a little legislation, and then we get this hearing with Moultrie and Bray, God bless them, first one since 1968. But it's part of the process. It's not the end of the race. It's the beginning. We're moving forward. And the fact that they had the hearing at all was what was important, not what those guys had to say. But in terms of what has been, how this has gone forward, this is something I've repeated hundreds of times, and I'm going to continue because it's something that every American needs to get to minimize the anxiety, assuming that's even possible these days, is this. Everything that has happened, let's just take the last 7 years. Everything that has happened since the New York Times articles of December of 17 came out, and then things started happening and witnesses coming forward and talking privately to members of Congress and the media going up, and then you got some legislation and the hearings and this and that, everything, and the creation of AARO, or the task force and the AARO, and yada, 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 the whole package. Everything that has been happening, in case you didn't know it, is not about trying to find out finally what this is. No, not at all. Zero. The U.S. government has known what it is for decades. It's known what it is since Roswell. The government is well aware. We have vehicles in the sky. We have crash vehicles in our hands. We have ET bodies. The government knows about them. Those that need to know in the government know. And a lot of people that don't need to know. So it's not about that at all. But I can understand why people are thinking, oh, they set up AARO to get some, reports in and whatever, and look at them and study them and come up with trying to maybe understand what is this thing going on. No, not at all. So if it's not about finding out what's going on, what is it about? And this is where it gets tricky, okay? Everything that has been going on. Now, not everybody involved in it. This elaborate process is now 7 years in the making, may know this. They may think that it is about trying to find out what's going on, and they're playing their role, whether they're passing legislation or they're sitting on a committee, whatever. Not everybody understands what I'm about to say, even the ones that are involved. But it applies to them and everyone else. All of this is about getting disclosure. A substantial element within the military intelligence complex came to the realization that the Truth Embargo was not going to live forever, that its time was coming to an end. And obviously, that's going to be a problem. It's a very big deal. And so there was a need to prepare for it. In other words, worst case scenario, nothing has been happening the last 7 years, and then Xi Jinping comes out and just confirms the ET presence on a Monday. Brings out all kinds of evidence. He's the disclosure, head of state. The Chinese people are going crazy, and the rest of the world is like, what the hell? That could happen at any time. And say it happened on Monday. Guess what happens Tuesday? Every reporter in the country is cramming every briefing room in Washington and every other thing they can get to, asking a torrent of questions. What? And there's no legislation. There's no arrow. There's no lead up. The Congress is not involved. It's a fiasco. It's a catastrophe. And so they understood that. My God, we have got to get this done. It would be nice if we were the country that ended the truth embargo, but we've got to get to there. Now, they could have just said the president come on out and do it, right? Or force the president, whatever. But again, without all this infrastructure, without all this prelude, it would be chaos. And so they set about to get it done. Now, the dilemma they had was they couldn't tell you why. They couldn't come out and say, we're going to start doing legislation, we're going to hold hearings, we're going to be listening to witnesses, we're going to get the Congress involved, and we're going to do all the things that we need to do because there's extraterrestrials here. And we need to prepare to tell you that. Except that, of course, they just told you that. So they have a catch-22. They can't tell you why they're doing it because they're doing it so they can tell you. And it would be orderly. And so when President Trump's disclosed, we have ample legislation and probably some more that will be added to deal with the post-disclosure revealing process. We have the Congress fully involved. We have plenty of witness testimony. We have Arrow, right? And of course, the public has had a lot of time to sort of figure out that things are moving forward. And so when the president discloses, we're ready for it. We're ready to deal with all the questions and the media and everything else and deal with getting the information to the public. But that is what is tough. People are going, what? And I'm saying, once you see it that way, whether you're a member of Congress or a member of the media, once you understand this is not about finding out what the hell this is, it's about getting to the point where a president can disclose it and things will then go forward, hopefully well. That's what it's about. Then it makes sense. And that's one of the things I repeat over and over again and encourage people, that's what's going on. And if you think about it that way, you'll start to catch on and it'll be a lot less unnerving, right? A lot less. But those that don't get that, every little thing that happens, they go on Twitter and they go after it and they go after this and they attack this person and that person. It doesn't make sense. And this photo and that photo and everything else. And because they think this is some sort of proving process. It's not. And once you get that, you can chill, right? You can chill and relax and just wait for it to result with the disclosure.
So kind of like tap into your inner Zen and just let everything play out the way that it needs to.
Not totally. Start focusing on encouraging the government to get the job done, right? In other words, email, Twitter tag members of Congress, particularly the committee, saying, right on, we love it, keep this going, we need more hearings, we want more witnesses. Send emails to the White House like Schumer did, saying we would very much like an executive order, basically declassifying everything, which will obviously speed things up, but also would lead very quickly to disclosure by the president. Whatever, do that. Encourage disclosure, right? And don't fret about the fact that some new piece of evidence is going to prove to be fake and undermine the whole thing. The government's got vaults of evidence. It's just another article just turned out that somebody, I forget who it was, confirmed that the Department of Defense has a massive trove of videos, right? You think those 3 gun camera footages that were in the New York Times article is all they got? They got enough stuff to create a 1,000 episode streaming series. So just don't worry about anything that undermines the confirmation or the truth of this. The evidence is overwhelming. Just worry about getting disclosure from the president before some idiot accidentally launches a tactical nuke and blows up a city, worry about that.
In that case, what advice would you want to give Representatives Luna and Burleson to achieve greater success than their predecessors in advancing disclosure?
I don't know if I could give them any advice. I think they're doing a great job. They're going on TV and like Burchett and saying, yeah, there's ETs here. We got crashed vehicles more than once. And Luna has taken her job as head of that task force. They're getting JFK documents. People again are complaining again. Where was the smoking gun? Get the documents, right? I think getting those documents is trivial, really, in a sense. Once the hammer is coming down, which is what that task force is, you just get the documents out. The only problem there is there's some people, mostly dead, that are going to have their legacy altered. Okay. And there's going to be some people that may learn some things that will make them more unhappy with their government. They're already pretty unhappy with the government, so a little more, what difference is it going to make? So that's pretty easy. The Epstein files is a little trickier, but JFK, MLK, RFK, no problem. So they're going to get that. And the UAP stuff is on her agenda, and they're pursuing that as well. And so they are doing the job. Anna Paulina Luna is heading towards a very significant place in history, which she will share with Comer and Mace and Burchett and others, and Burleson too, who is now beginning more into this issue. He's really taking it on, which is good because he's a little more moderate representative and very well liked. That's helpful. And others, obviously Schumer, and Gillibrand and Rounds and others are going to be get a piece of that legacy. They're doing a pretty good job. I don't know what more they could do other than get real aggressive, but under the circumstances, given what's happening in the world, we're in the middle of the 7-year period, an awful war begins in Europe, and it's still going on. The worst plague or pandemic in modern times, maybe worse than any ever, takes place worldwide. And so forth, and other things that we all know about have happened. They have still kept this thing going forward. It is never backed up. And so I hesitate to tell what they could do better. I think they're doing a damn good job. I just want them to keep doing it until they get the goal.
Stephen, I have so many more questions for you, but we are just near the end of the show. So I just have one final question for you. If disclosure occurred tomorrow, what would be the first thing you would do?
I would sit in my office waiting for the phone to ring and the emails to come in, the requests for interviews to happen, because that's what I do. I would and in between, I'd be making calls to my closest colleagues to just celebrate a little bit. Pretty much on day one. And of course, I have the news on all day. And
of course.
I just enjoy it that way. And then hopefully, and I know that we start, people start calling each other and setting up some get-togethers to share this new world together, celebration. And there's ways to do that. That's about the best I can give you right now. And that would be a lot. But long-term, post-disclosure, I am working as hard as I'm trying to do my best to get some money into Paradigm Research Group, which is a small entity, but very well positioned in the National Press Building, 2 blocks from the White House with the press club above. And I'm trying to raise about $25,000 so I can launch at least 2 projects leading into disclosure. And I'll be pursuing those. I'm hoping to hold the 7th X conference. I've done 6 in the area, Washington area, but I hope to hold that in the post-disclosure world. So obviously working to try to raise money to allow PRG to be a player. But there are other players on the field now, big ones. You've got the UAP Disclosure Fund. You've got the Society for UAP Studies, unbelievable group. They've just come together in the last year. 30 PhDs. It's amazing. I assume they're raising money and worthy of that. There's been no group ever like it. I mean, PhDs from a bunch of colleges. I mean, the real deal. And so the academic stigma is just about gone. There's that. And then you've got the New Paradigm Institute, which is preparing itself to deal with the post-disclosure world and has got a vast website and a lot of projects, and they've raised a few $100,000. They need to raise millions. Hopefully people will do that. And so right away, you're going to see all these groups really trying to take advantage of the disclosure event to get money. Why? Not to buy yachts. Get money so that they can influence the post-disclosure world. This is one of my number one concerns, is that when disclosure happens, will the organizations created by my colleagues, the people you and I know that have serviced this issue at great sacrifice for decades, will these organizations be shut out by the big organizations that will come together post-disclosure from various aspects of our society and foundations, as well as some business, corporate, to create how to engage the post-disclosure world? Will these entities be shut out? Meaning, good job, we'll take it from here. We don't want that. I'm hoping the public will heavily fund the people that have done the work, that know the issue, that have written the books, done the documentaries for decades when all of the other institutions were just not willing to go there, that they will have the funding so that the citizens of this country will be well represented in the post-disclosure world and not just are responding to what the elite cook up. I'm not trying to criticize here. I'm saying it's going to be both. But the UAP activist, citizen activist, journalist, documentarist research effort cannot just be shoved into the past. It needs to go forward. It needs to be funded so that that expertise and that knowledge will be part of the post-disclosure reality that's coming. So I'll be focused on that, I can assure you.
Stephen, thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you, Patreon members that submitted your questions to the conversation. Stephen, before we end today's show, where can people find you online to stay up to date with all the things that you're doing?
ParadigmResearchGroup.org has got a lot of resources there, including the Print Media Archive and others. I need to add more, all right? It has got a full donation module where it's possible to donate and get tax deduction by supporting PRG, as well as the other entities that I've just mentioned. And again, I welcome anyone who wants to help out.
And that link will be in the description box below. Stephen, thank you.
If you enjoy the strange and the mysterious, UFOs, the paranormal, and cryptids, this channel is for you. So make sure to subscribe, as I do 3 videos right here every single week, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss any of the bonus content I post right here.